Hello, Shegun Fatima. Welcome. You're regaining your first position again. Mufelala, welcome. Eric Lindu, wow, long time. Welcome back. Shaw Smith, Tobinsi Ade, Paul Oriade, Niyo Lushala, Victor Ogundipe, Daniel Natsenga, Obi Ojimadu, Bidemi, Shigo. Welcome everybody. Like you know, this week we are talking about who wins in life. But today is going to be a special day and a special moment and a special time because we are going to be talking with PEREZ today. And most of you people said you like to listen to them and enjoy them. And so PEREZ is going back to school, so he will not be in the position to be in the program anymore regularly. Maybe the sisters could be coming back once in a while. But PEREZ will be reviewing the book Insulted by Ungodliness today. And of course, tomorrow is our last born's birthday. Tomorrow is Friday, on 13th of January. Pearl will be 14. So I would like us to start with that, PEREZ. What about Pearl is a character kind of, you know, she's a character in our own class. What about having Pearl as a sister? How does that feel?
Oh, I think after seeing her speak for some while, after having some of her appearances here, you can at least have a little idea of how she is, that she likes to talk, she's really wise. But as being her older brother for a long time, I can definitely say that I've definitely learned things from her that you wouldn't just be able to see throughout the screen. Things that I've learned after all these years, even though maybe it took pain, maybe it took laughter and joy. All these lessons you could say that I learned from my younger sister, they're all very valuable. I think you will enjoy them. The first lesson I've learned, or almost the first observation I've seen, is how much she cares for us as a family. Because as you recall, when we had when we did my birthday thing, we talked about how my family doesn't really celebrate birthdays too much. We don't celebrate holidays, just to keep the importance of Jesus. Just keep the importance of Jesus and just to keep our priorities straight. But Pearl, being the youngest born, she's always trying to care for the family. She's always asking us, well, do you want something for Christmas? Even though we know we don't do this, but is there something you'd like? For every birthday, she'll always be thinking of ways to please you, thinking of ways to make you happy. And that is just something that I've learned for myself, that you can always find ways to care for your family, care for your loved ones. You don't have to follow the system in every way, but your family comes first. And she really helps me, you could say, put it in perspective that even if we don't make a big deal about it, there's nothing wrong with maybe granting a wish of your sibling, granting a wish of your parents, just helping be a light in their life somehow. So that I definitely learned from my sister, because I guess as being a guy, you don't really try to be too sappy, be too emotional. But as being girls, they're more emotional, they're more in touch, you could say, with their feelings. So Pearl is definitely one that is in touch with her feelings. She expresses her emotions very well. And these emotions of love, of caring for her family, I can say I've picked up some tips in how to, you could say, be a more family man. And the second lesson that I've got from her is also to care for other people, and also to, it's teaching me how to care for other people. Since obviously I am the oldest, she's the youngest, so I've obviously had times in my life where I've had to take care of her, where I've had to take care of both of my sisters. So just all those times of taking care for my sisters, helping them with their homework, helping them with discipline, all of these things have helped me grow up as almost a more responsible older brother. It's helping me be more responsible, because when I'm taking care of my younger sisters, that means I have responsibility. And you can't just learn responsibility without making mistakes. And of course, I've made some mistakes, and I apologize to Pearl for all that I've done. But I also want to say that she has definitely helped me to become a more respectable person. For now, I'm able to take care of not only myself, but of other people as well. My third lesson that I got from her is her creativity. And I think she mentioned before, a few days ago, that she wants to become a writer. And everybody knows you cannot be a writer if you're not creative. And Pearl, she definitely is in touch with her artistic side of her brain. She likes to write, she likes to sing, she likes to draw. And me, I always see myself as more like the logical person, where I don't always like to be too creative. I'd rather go the straight way instead of like looking outside the box. But I've definitely learned to be more creative from her, especially last year when I had a gap year. So I was able to spend more time with my sisters, with my parents. I was able to like learn more about them. And her, I really got this whole creativity aspect from her, where because she'd find like almost like a way to put her spin on everything. And at first, when I was younger, I figured that annoying. For me, I'd just be like, why can't you just stick to the program and just do everything the same way? But when I grew older, and I just understood that she's unique that way, that she's able to be so creative that she can put her own spin on everything, that was really just awesome to me. So learning how to be creative and learning it's not bad to always think outside the box. I definitely picked that up from Pearl. And then another observation you could say that I've gotten from Pearl is her curiosity and her love for information. And when Dad always talks about self-education, about being able to spend your own time learning about new topics, learning about new information, I'd say Pearl encompasses that the best out of all the kids, because if you have any conversation with her, you can talk to her about politics, about animals, about movies, about music, and she'd have at least some common knowledge in each of these areas. And she's really intelligent, and all that has to come from curiosity. She's always wanting to go outside. I think of all the kids, she's the one that always wants to go outside, always wants to go to the park, go to the playground. She has the most curiosity, and that really helps her to become someone that lots of information to themselves, that their brain becomes full of lots of different information. And you could always think of it as random facts, but she always finds a way to connect it to the current conversation. And as you saw, she was able to speak to you guys for about 2 hours, I think, when reviewing her book. She had lots of different topics that she was able to incorporate into the book. And she was able to do that all because of her love for information and her curiosity. And me, I'm curious about some things, but I could say that I lose my interest quite rapidly when it's stuff I'm not too bothered with. But from her, I'm able to find, oh, there is a benefit with like following through your curiosity, learning more about every situation, because you never know when it'll be able to help you, and it certainly helps with connecting the dots in any way. And the fifth lesson I definitely received from my sister, not only Pearl, but Zoe as well, is about patience. Since I'm obviously the only boy out of the kids, and those two are girls, and I'm a guy, it's not always easy to understand them, and especially when I'm the other sibling, when I have to take care of them, when they don't listen. Patience is something that I've definitely learned from them. Even though I still feel like I have the least patience with them out of other people, I'm only able to have more patience with other people because of them. I spend most time with them. Most of my time growing up has been with them. I'm able to work on my patience with them anytime, even now. And I'm sure for many years to come, I'll still be working on my patience with them. And I'm just grateful that they're able to handle me when I'm patient with them. But I can definitely say that they are the reason why my patience is so well.
Well, before you go to the next point, I want to also call on everybody that's watching. If you have not yet shared the link for this program, please go ahead and do it, because after Perez finishes talking about his sister, we are going to be talking about the book, the review of the book. So go ahead and share the link. Go find the share button, and let's share the message. Let's share the link to this program. Thank you.
My sixth point is about...
A bit louder, please, they're saying.
Oh, okay. My sixth point...
Maybe not louder, but affirmative.
All right. My sixth point is about being a good role model. where she's definitely taught me how to be a big role model, because now I'm thinking about, oh, I have a younger sibling, and whenever she mentions things like, oh, I picked this up from my brother, or oh, I saw my brother do this and I decided to try it, it really puts things in perspective of, oh, my younger siblings actually see what I do, they actually learn from me. And there's no way I'm able to do everything I do just because I want to do it. There's certainly times where, if, for example, our mother tells us all three to do it, obviously my younger siblings are gonna look up to me to be the first one to go ahead, maybe drink a fruit smoothie or drink a vegetable smoothie or take some vitamins. They're always gonna look ahead of me to see that, am I doing it right? Am I doing it? Am I following my parents' example? And that just helps me think about it more, where it helps me not to be so selfish with my actions, because now I'm thinking, oh, my parents, my sisters are looking at me. I have to do my homework first. I have to incorporate all these values, not only for myself, but for my younger siblings as well. And even if it's almost becoming subconscious where, oh, my sister's looking, so I have to do this, it's still helping me almost elevate myself, making sure that I'm trying to be the best version of me so that my younger siblings can be the best versions of themselves. And the seventh point, and it's more like a live evaluation, where I see that we don't have to be exactly the same in order to enjoy each other's company. And me and my sister, we differ, of course. I'd say every person differs, but me and my sister, we differ as well. She's more loud. I like to keep things more low-key. She really likes to talk a lot, and I like to be concise. I like to, say, use my words wisely, not to just keep on talking and talking. Yet we're still able to work together. We're still able to function as a family, and that just helps me think for the future, where even if I don't find people that have everything straight in common to me, doesn't mean that I just have to give up on them. It also means where I can still be with them, I can still talk with them, I can still find a compromise and still be able to work with them. And that definitely is born from your family, because if your family was exactly alike, then there's no way you'd be able to go out into the world and have any patience for any other people. But the fact that me and my sister are different, yet we're still able to function well as brother and sister, it's really helped me think about the future and just know that I have faith that I'll be able to work with anybody that comes my way. My eighth point, and it's about letting go of my pride in order to apologize. And I don't know how many of you guys are older siblings, but you should all know that it's very difficult to apologize in general. But it's even worse to apologize to a younger sibling, because you feel like your pride, you feel like, no, I can't belittle myself in front of my younger siblings, like, where would that put me? Especially for a male that is all about respect and pride, that's just always difficult to do. But just being born in a family where our parents have taught us good values, where they've taught us to be good siblings, apologizing, we had to do it whether we liked it or not. And after a while, that pride aspect of apologizing just goes away, because there have been many times where, like, my sister has annoyed me, for example, and then I've had a bad reaction, and then I'd feel like, why do I have to apologize when she's the one that started it first? But it doesn't matter. I still have to be the one to be the bigger person, still have to apologize. And that's helped me with my pride, because if I can't even apologize to my sisters, how will I be able to handle, like, almost any authority? Or how will I be able to have any friendships or relationships where I can't be the bigger man and step down and apologize? So this is also one for the future, where my sister, and just living with sisters, it's helped me learn to just be the bigger man and step down. My ninth point is that she really proves to me that it is family over everything, because she really is family orientated. She talks to everybody. Whenever she comes home, she'll come to everyone's rooms, she'll greet everybody, she'll talk about their day, and it's really cool to see that wherever I'll be, if I'm gone in university or if I'm out working somewhere, whenever I'll come home, I'll always have a younger sister, and she'll always be there, always curious about me, always asking questions about me, how I've been. And even though I don't always appreciate it as much as I could, I definitely am appreciating it the older I grow, the more wiser I become. I definitely see more the importance of having a younger sibling that really helps just put everything in perspective, because family will always be with you until the very end. And it's good to know that since I'm the oldest, my deathbed, I should always have a younger sister who will be there for me. And my last point is about laughter, that me and my sister, we love to laugh. And I think laughter is very essential for any family, because it really helps maybe break any tension. It helps you feel comfortable speaking about anything. And just with my sister, we're able to speak about many different topics because we're able to laugh about almost anything. And I think laughter is very essential in every relationship, whether it's father and daughter, whether it's father-son, coach, student, teacher-student, doctor-client. I think all relationships should have at least some manner of comedy and laughter to it. And I see that mostly from my sister, because she also loves to laugh. She always likes to bring things into comedic relief, you could say, and so do I. So we really do share that in common, and that's one of the biggest things that at least I enjoy from having a younger sister.
Beautiful. Again, if you have not yet shared the message, if you have not yet shared this link, look under the video now. You will see some button and some instructions suggesting to you how to share the message. So please look for how to share the message, and let's share the message quickly. You can put the share button. Let's quickly share it. And if you have shared it, then we'll be moving to the next agenda of our day. And the next agenda, thank you, PEREZ, for giving your assessment about Pro. The next thing we're going to do today is we're going to be talking about reviewing the book, Insulted by Ungodliness. So tell us, how do you want to approach that?
So, Insulted by Ungodliness, it's a new book that my dad has written. I think it came out about last month, but my dad has been having this topic in his mind for many years now. He's had these plans set in motion for a couple of years, and he's definitely talked about at least aspects about this in his sermons before. But now he has put it all together into this book, Insulted by Ungodliness. It talks about why you need to actually take your anger and use it in a constructive manner. It talks about why ungodliness has become so prevalent in our society today and what we have to do in order to change that. And all these topics, all these questions that you may have had about ungodliness, about being insulted. And this is the book, of course, Insulted by Ungodliness. There are lots of people who talk about it as well. And I think it's just a wonderful book. I've read it recently myself, and I think it's gonna impact me really well. It has 10 chapters, about 180 pages, so you can read it really quickly. And I think if you're able to read it quickly, if you're able to digest it, if you're able to apply everything to your life, you will definitely become a nation changer. And as my dad says, you shall not be a biomass, but you shall be one of the higher 3%. You shall not be one that is moving like the ordinary. You shall become out of the ordinary because of this book. It will definitely help you learn to use your frustrations, use your anger, and use even your bad situations. Use it in order to elevate yourself to a higher position, in order to help not only yourself, but the people around you. So our first chapter is called Insulted by Injustice. Because when you think about insulted by ungodliness, there seems to be many aspects of ungodliness. Mm-hmm. Ungodliness covers, if you think about it, a wide sphere of things. Everything that is not godly, everything that is not good is ungodly. So you could think about, wait, what specifically am I supposed to be insulted by? Or how am I supposed to be insulted by it? And my dad starts, first of all, with injustice. Injustice because it's one of the most prevalent things we see in our society today. We always see people thinking about themselves. We always see people about themselves, thinking about how we're gonna how we're gonna do you, how we're gonna do yourself. Okay.
Once in a while you'll be doing that.
All right. So this first chapter, let me show them just the first chapter as well. First chapter, Insulted by Injustice, talks about injustice and how you can use injustice that is all over society to elevate yourself and in order to make it work for yourself almost. And you can be talking about how our passion, even the way we're insulted, it can be turned into a blessing. That's one of the first major points that my dad raises here, where when you're passionate about the way you're being treated, if you're not liking it, if you're seeing that no, this is wrong, you shouldn't just only keep that to yourself. You shouldn't only be thinking to yourself, wow, this is such a bad situation I'm in. Oh well, and continue living with your life. You should be thinking about ways to stop this injustice that is occurring either in your life or in someone's life you know. You should be thinking of ways to stop it, thinking of how to convert your injustice into something good. And my dad really used lots of examples in this book in order to show to you that what he's saying is not impossible. He shows lots of human people that maybe you have even heard of, or people from the Bible that have been able to turn their circumstances into better things. And he first starts off with Moses. And you're thinking, Moses, injustice? Wasn't he born into a royal family? Wasn't he adopted by the Egyptians? Wasn't he one of the most great people of the Bible? But in his case, the injustice he felt was towards his own people, the Jews, not especially towards himself. And if you're familiar with the Bible, familiar with Moses' story, we know how he killed the Egyptians who were punishing the Jews. And you think, why would he do that other than if he knew he was a Jew? And he knew he was a Jew, and he was insulted by the fact that the Egyptians were doing such bad things to the Jews. And this is a situation where you're thinking like, okay, I have the anger, I see the injustice, but isn't it wrong? Isn't killing someone wrong in order to pursue your purpose? And that is definitely correct. My dad does address that. He does address that the way Moses handled things were not right. He addressed that in order to do it right, in order to use your anger in a constructive way, you have to make yourself submissive to the Lord. The Lord will use your anger, and he will use it to help you influence nations. He will use it to help you not make a mistake like Moses did. If you think about it, Moses did not consult God before trying to kill the Egyptian. He was caught in the heat of the moment. He let his emotions get the better of him. And what was the end of that? He killed an Egyptian, and he had to flee his home. He had to flee his family because he knew that he wouldn't be able to stay there. Those were the consequences of his actions, and we don't want every person out there taking what I'm saying and then seeing some injustice and killing people because of that. No, that is not the way to go. We should trust our anger in God, and we should always remember that he is the one that can control our anger. He's the one that can make our anger into something useful and not just killing like Moses did. And it's very important for us to remember that. And the most common way of feeling insulted is through injustice. And in your quest for justice, an indication that you have been insulted by injustice, you must never consider giving up or walking away from demanding justice. You should always use your voice to proclaim that, okay, this is wrong, and you must think, okay, how am I going to fix this? You shouldn't keep it to yourself. You shouldn't be a person who just as I said before, who will be a biomass, who won't be someone unique. And without being unique, you can do nothing. You can't help anyone if you're just ordinary. So in order to not be ordinary, you need to take this injustice, you need to take this anger, this frustration, and convert it into something useful. And you'll be able to do that by following the Lord. You have to take a step into actualizing the very thing you have persuaded yourself to do. You shouldn't allow injustice to silence your voice. When you silence your voice, you're actually allowing ungodliness and injustice to take over your life. And then what is the point of that? Then you're just becoming ordinary. You are having no effect in the world. If you allow ungodliness to overcome you, then there's almost no point to you even having these thoughts of how am I going to fix this injustice that I'm seeing. You should not allow anything or anybody to stop you from pursuing your goals of making this world a just place. And we see injustice all around. We see people being oppressed. We see beggars on the streets not having the same living standards. We see, especially as my dad was talking about Nigeria a lot, people who would be stealing the government funds, people who would be oligarchs just taking money from the common people. So injustice is everywhere, but it's up to us, up to every person to actually take a stand and not just allow injustice to go on. Because if we allow it to go on, then there's no point of us, I'm saying us being Christians, because if we're not able to stop this ungodliness and injustice from spreading, then we're only thinking about ourselves. And as we know, God, Jesus' golden commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. That means you shouldn't only think about yourself, we should think about your neighbor as well. The neighbor that is suffering through this injustice, the neighbor who cannot stand up for themselves. You are having the Bible in your hands. You have to do, you need to just stand up, use your voice, and not become a victim of injustice.
You want to drink some water, maybe? Yep. Okay.
So that was a good overview of chapter 1 about injustice, about how there's injustice everywhere, but in order not to become just an ordinary person, you have to become a person who will use their voice to stand out in the society. So chapter 1, insulted by injustice. Then we have chapter 2, by the title of Power of Parliament and Pen. And you're thinking, power of Parliament and Pen. He may be referring to each one of us who decide to take a stand, somehow use Parliament and pen as their power. But then you'd be thinking, how will I be able to find someone who has this position in Parliament? But in this example, the title, he was referring to another example that he's been using in this book. His name is William Wilberforce, and some of you will know him, and he's the one who is responsible, you could say, for abolishing the slave trade in Great Britain. And he's using this example because he was a member of Parliament, and he was able to use his influence to really push to the abolishment of the slave trade. So how do we take William Wilberforce's life and apply it to ourselves? William Wilberforce did not just sit around and say, okay, I see slaves, I know that it's wrong, but I'll just continue living because it's good for maybe my country's economy. No, he saw that there was an injustice, he saw that it was wrong, and he used his power, his influence, and he really went as hard as he could. He had lots of sleepless nights, he had lots of opposition, but he didn't allow it to stop him. Even when he got fatally sick near the end of his life, he was still pushing actively for the abolishment of the slave trade. And we as just people who have decided to take a step in the right direction and fight against injustice, we need to look around us and say, what is the most effective way we have of treating against this injustice? Where do we have the most influence? What is the way where we can apply our talents in the best way? William Wilberforce, he was a very talented politician, and that's why he was able to get into Parliament in the first place. Now that he was able to get there, he was able to use that influence in order to help speed up the process of the abolishment of the slave trade. And that is the type of mentality that we all have to adopt. We're all good at something because we all have a purpose in something. And you need to find that purpose. You need to become one of the best in it so you'll be able to have that influence, because it is guaranteed, it is hard to just stand out, and if there's a group of 100 people and you say 3 of them are out of the special people, so they're separated from that group. But if you're part of the 97 remaining and you decide to take a stand, it'd be hard for everyone else to hear you when you're still in the middle of these 96 other people, because you're still all together as a biomass. So you need to be able to separate yourself, make sure your voice can be heard, so that you will become someone who will not only have it inside of them to stand for injustice and stand against injustice and against ungodliness, but you're able to prove it with your actions, with your deeds. And you'll be able to prove it by going forward, by becoming someone of not necessarily higher status, but someone who has influence, so you'll be able to use your talents in order to fight against this. So that is about the first part, the power of Parliament. And William Wilberforce, his commonly less known talents were with writing, where he was able to write lots of letters, lots of poetry about his life. And he was actually able to progress the speed of the abolishment trade through his letters, convincing other senators, other members of Parliament to vote against the slave trade. Because, of course, it's hard to do everything by yourself. You shouldn't feel like you have to carry the burden of the world. All you have to do is use your talents in order to do as much as you can. So William Wilberforce's talents in Parliament are evidently shown, but the behind-the-scenes talents of all the letters that he wrote to other members, all the poetry he wrote in order to influence people, all of that was behind the scenes even though he still used all his talents, even though you don't know about it, he still used his talents in order to further his goals, further the abolishment of the slave trade. He was able to use all his talents in every way, and that is how we should apply it as well. If we apply it to our lives, we can apply it as all these secondary things where we thought about, oh, this isn't important or this isn't necessary. We need to apply every aspect of our talent in it, because you'll be good at something if you work at it hard enough. People just choose to specialize at different things. When you go to university, you can start out as undeclared as your major, but by the time you finish, you will graduate with a degree in some specialized manner. So we have been taught to be specialized only towards one thing. But here, when we see by power of the pen and by the parliament, we're able to see that we don't only have to specialize into one thing. We can almost branch out. We can, like I talked about Pearl, where she loves to find out new information, likes to increase her knowledge about lots of different aspects. We can do the same thing. We don't only have to specialize in one area. We can hone all of our talents, all of everything that we're good at in order to continue going forward, in order to continue being better. And a third aspect of William Wilberforce's life that I guess is not in enough light is about how he was a Christian, how he was able to follow God in order to become a person who we even talk about today, about 300 years after he died. And the fact that he was a Christian, it helped him exercise that vision in his life. The vision to him was given by God. It wasn't just random to abolish slavery, because I'm sure there have been many people before who thought slavery was wrong, who thought that it was bad. But how come only this person was able to have such a big impact on the abolishment of the slave trade? It's not a coincidence that he used all his talents and that he was a Christian. It can't be a coincidence at all. He was a God-fearing Christian, and he didn't only use all his voice in parliament, he also used it on paper and pen. So I think it's very important that we have this advantage of being Christian, the advantage of hearing God inside our hearts as he is directing us to go forward. As I mentioned about Moses, when he used his anger to kill the Egyptian, he wasn't listening to God. That wasn't God's will at that point in time. But William Wilberforce, he was using God's will to guide his actions, and he was rewarded for it, for he saw the abolishment of the slave trade still was, and that could not be done if it was just random. It was all thanks to God. And in order to be like him, we also have to be willing to listen to God. It is very hard if you have all this talent, if you have all these ideas, to still be like referring to God, to still be submissive to God and listen to him for his plan, for his time scheme. Sometimes you think, oh, I have it all set in place. Let me just go straight forward at 100 miles per hour. You always have to go at God's pace. You always have to listen to how he wants it done, how he needs it to be done. Because, of course, his way will work while yours isn't 100% guaranteed. Yours is only 100% guaranteed when you listen to God and when you follow all his footsteps. Thus, in order, if you want to be like William Wilberforce, want to be remembered for ages and generations to come, you need to be able to use all your talents, specifically your main ones that give you the most influence. Use them in order to stop injustice, to stop ungodliness from spreading throughout society, and you have to be willing to listen to God, to almost put yourself aside, put your selfish ambitions aside, and then listen to God and whatever he wants you to do. So that is what we pick up from this chapter mostly. At least me personally, that in order to be someone who will be remembered for ages to come, we need to be submissive to the Lord and use our talents as much as we can.
Well, for everybody watching us, if you have not yet shared the link, please go ahead and feel free to share the link to this message. Under your video, you'll be able to see some buttons or some ideas on how to share the message. So let's go ahead and share the link to this one. Let's share this video. And if you have not yet bought the book, Insulted by Ungodliness, that's an idea for you. That's, why you need to go and get it. Can you show book again.
Yep.
So that's okay.
Assaulted by Ungodliness. Starting off with chapter 3. And chapter 3 is called Freedom Fighters. Freedom Fighters. That seems, maybe you're thinking firefighter, maybe you're thinking people who fight for the people's freedom. And that is actually right. It's people who either fought for their freedom or for the freedom of other people, whether physically or mentally. So these freedom fighters, obviously, my dad is talking about people from the past who've been able to take what we just talked about in chapter 1 and 2, take their anger, frustration at injustice all around them. They're able to take their talents and form them into something high and of good influence, and able to listen to the Lord in order to use it to get someone's freedom. The first person we talked about was Moses, as we refer back to him in chapter 1, where even though he killed the Egyptian, he still was able to listen to the Lord for the rest of his life. I think it's only recorded that he disobeyed the Lord once when he didn't believe and trusted enough for providing the water. But for the rest of his life, he was consistent with the Lord. He followed with him for 40 years in the desert. He brought down the 10 Commandments. So Moses was with the Lord this whole time. And even after that mistake, the Lord forgave him, and he was able to continue going forward with all his talents. The next, more modern, you could say hero, freedom fighter that we have is Martin Luther King Jr., as he was a civil rights activist where he was really influential in stopping segregation in America in the 1900s. And I think it's very important to see how, even though he was educated, you could say he was one of the more privileged African Americans of his generation, he was still did not turn a blind eye to all the fellow African Americans that he saw were being oppressed, that were being killed because of racism. Where even though he could have easily just turned a blind eye and lived out, I'd say, decent paying life, just being because he was educated, but he decided to stop that. He decided to become a full-time civil rights activist. He decided to take out his anger in the form of civil rights protest. He wouldn't allow anger to really totally overcome him like it did Moses, and that shows that he was definitely listening to the Lord, and he wasn't allowing his anger to get the better of him. So all of this really helps to show that Martin Luther King, he was really able to use all his talents to get the most out of the people. He was able to really fight not only for his freedom, but for the freedom of so many African Americans. There's even a holiday dedicated to him, and that would not be the case if he did not have any influence in the world. But thanks to the fact that he was able to use his talents to get to a high enough position, he was able to not definitely abolish, not totally cure racism in America, but he really helped push it a long way forward. And for that, his efforts are definitely being recognized. And it's really good how he was able to think about others, not only about himself, whereas you're in a position where if you're comfortable, if your family is doing well, it's very hard for a person to decide to leave that all behind for thousands amount of other people. But Martin Luther King Jr. was one of those people who was strong enough, who was brave enough to give up his comfortable life in order to help so many other people. And that really just helps, that really should make all of us respect him, and it really helps him to be a true freedom fighter. And another person we have as a freedom fighter is Mary Slessor. She's probably not as well known as Martin Luther King Jr., yet her impact was still huge. She's a Scottish lady, and she decided to give up her life in Scotland to go to Nigeria, to Calabar, in order to stop the killing of twins. Because there was a practice back in the day in Nigeria that if twins were born, they were viewed as evil. Not both of them, one of them was evil. But since they did not know who was evil, whether it was the first one or the second one, they would leave both of the twins out in the forest, or they'd kill both of the twins. I don't know how Mary heard about this all the way in Scotland, but when she heard about it, she couldn't let herself rest, basically. She decided to give up her whole life in Scotland, which was probably a much better place than Nigeria at that point of time, and decided to move to Nigeria in order to stop all these meaningless deaths. And you have to think about it. what would motivate a person to do all that for people she didn't even know? And it's almost, you could almost view it as madness that someone would give up their whole life in order to just go for people she doesn't know, for she doesn't know she'll be rejected. She knows that she's going to a completely foreign land, and she's still going there at 100 miles per hour, not scared of any of the repercussions. And just wonderful that she was able to go there. She was able to go to Calabar, Nigeria. She was able to save all, I think, thousands, millions of twins, and she was able to help them. She was able to raise them. She became the mother to so many children. Even though she had none of her own children by biology, she was still the mother to so many other children. And it's just fantastic how she was able to listen to the Lord and see that the injustice and the ungodliness, even though this was happening in a different part of the world, that she still knew that she was able to have influence on that part of the world. That's why we shouldn't think that, oh, just because I feel like I don't have anything too extraordinary about me, that means I can't be great. Mary Slessor, she wasn't born in any royalty. She wasn't even high class or middle class. So she was still someone who did not have much of an advantage when you think about it when it comes to life. But she was still able to use herself, use her talents, and use her dedication to the Lord in order to become someone who was really great in the history books. She was able to save countless lives. She was able to almost kill that tradition of killing twins, and she was able to do this because she fought for these kids' freedom. And her anger was justified because of the steps she took to stop these crimes of ungodliness and injustice against humanity. So she was able to get provoked in order to do a positive thing, and I think we should all use that mentality. Get provoked, get angry, but don't use it in a non-constructive way. Get your anger, control it, let it motivate you to change something around you. You can start small. You can start with something in your neighborhood, but always remember to try to look forward. You shouldn't limit yourself to only your neighborhood or only your group of friends. You can go all the way to become a generational figure. There's no one that's stopping you, only yourself. You are your biggest limit. So you should get provoked. You should not let the anger consume you, but you should let it motivate you and let it be your incentive. Let your incentive be for ungodliness to stop spreading and for our godly values and our godly ways to continue living in this world. So that's a good roundup of chapter 3. And chapter 4 are about the reformers. So the reformers are, again, this chapter is about more examples of people who were able to reform, able to use their standings, use their influence to become one of the great people in history. And of course, when you think about the reformers, you have to think about Martin Luther, the person who is responsible for nailing the 95 Theses on the wall, responsible for basically fathering Protestantism and Lutheranism. He was just able to do lots of things, able to start basically the translation of the Bible into different languages, and all that is because he was not satisfied with how the Roman Catholic Church was doing things. He saw how they would be selling indulgences, how they'd be taking advantage of people, and he just realized that this could not be right. He realized that as a Christian myself, and as I've studied the Bible, he saw that he could not agree with what the Roman Catholic Church was doing with their practices. And I'm sure that there are plenty and many of us who think, well, I don't really like everything I do or that goes on in my church either. Does that mean I have to start a whole revolution? Not necessarily. All you have to do is not be scared to speak out, because you're probably able to change something that you don't believe is right in your church. In Martin Luther's case, he was one of the first ones. He was the reformer. Thus, he had to go with such drastic means. And my dad mentions that he doesn't think that Martin Luther actually meant for such a revolution to occur when he nailed those 95 Theses. He was probably giving them as more as a suggestion instead of like an ultimatum where it's either you follow these 95 Theses or like I'm leaving the church. No, this is only a suggestion to the Roman Catholic Church that they should maybe amend their ways and they should consider these propositions. So you shouldn't be scared that, oh, what if I get in trouble with like my elders at church or the pastors at church? there's nothing to worry about there. You just have to go out. You should go
be more committed to the truth than to...
You should be more focused with the truth and what God is telling you instead of thinking about what man is thinking about you. And I think one of my dad's favorite sayings, it's not in this book, but just from my own life, where he's saying that I'd rather be alone with God than have all the people in the world support me but be without God. And you should really try to adopt that mentality if you are in this situation where you know you need to speak out, but you're worried about what either other people think about you or what the repercussions may be. Martin Luther, he had severe consequences for doing this. He had to be on the run from the church. He always had to be in hiding, but he was still able to have a good life. He was still able to follow God's teachings, translate the Bible, have a family. So just
fulfill his calling.
And most importantly, fulfill his life calling. And if we're talking about him now for a good reason, that means he definitely did fulfill his life calling. So you should not worry about, oh, what if something bad to me happens? You should be more focused about what God is telling you to do. You should take this injustice that you see, the ungodliness, you should not allow it to continue, because that would be committing the greater sin, and that is unacceptable. So if you are in a situation where you need to speak out, please do not fear. You know that the Lord is with you. Just follow the Lord's teachings, follow what He wants you to do, and you shall definitely become one person who will impact many people.
Well, before you continue, just if you are watching this and you don't know what's going on, we are doing a review of this book, Insulted by Ungodliness, and PEREZ is doing the review. So he's taking it chapter by chapter and explaining what he has learned and what we could all learn from this book. So if you are yet to do if you are yet to share the link, go ahead and share it. Under your video, you'll be able to see the share button. Let's go ahead and share it. And show us the book again, please.
Here we go. Insulted by Ungodliness, one of my dad's newest books. So continue with chapter 4 on the theme of the reformers. The next person we'll talk about is Saul of Tarsus, or better known as Paul in the Bible. And when I was reading this, I was actually really surprised because I was thinking, wait, Paul as a reformer? I know that later in his life where he wrote all his epistles and when he became like one of the Lord's most avid disciples, that he was really a person where you could, okay, his life is good. But my dad started off talking about Saul the Tarsus. So he was Saul when he wasn't a Christian yet. And it was very interesting to see my dad talk about that, how Saul used his anger against the Christians. And that was really weird at first, where I'm thinking, wait, is this the right way to go? I know that you're trying to let people know that anger can be used for a constructive purpose, but in this way, it didn't seem like this was the right play or the right path to go. But my dad was able to find a way to fool me completely as he continued talking about how Saul used that anger later on in his life when he became Paul to undo everything that he did before, basically, because even though before he became Paul, he was a person who did such awful things to the Christians, where he would hunt them down because he hated Christianity so bad. But he was able to use that anger as Paul to become one of the Lord's most avid followers. He was able to write all these epistles, all these books of the Bible. And it was really interesting to see that even if you have so much anger in your heart, the Lord is still able to turn it around. And for many people, anger is just daily routine. You get angry at silly things like traffic, at maybe your internet being slow, and lots of things can cause your anger. But here it's been taught that your anger should be used for more constructive things. Many people have anger, and that doesn't really make you special. But when you're able to fuel your anger and make your anger into something that's actually benefiting and impacting people, then you're actually becoming a person who is worth talking about. And when he became Paul, he was angry at himself before, at how he used to be, and all the people who were supporting him when he was Saul, to kill all the Christians. So he was able to use that to continue to follow the principles of the Lord, to help people, to commit miracles. So it was really interesting for me, at least personally. It might be my favorite part of this book, that even though you have anger in your heart, that doesn't mean you're a lost cause. You're still able to put any type of anger into constructive use, as long as you follow the Lord and as long as you let Him influence all of your thoughts and decisions. And next, we talk about Nelson Mandela, and lots of you should probably know about him. South Africa, probably South Africa's most famous person. And my dad talked about him because he really had to go through a lot in order to become the person who he was. And you think about it and you'd say, if a person spent 27 years in jail, he probably would have lots of anger. But it's very unlikely that that anger would be put to a constructive purpose. You'd be thinking about, he'd be angry at the people who imprisoned him, he'd be angry at the situations that caused him to be there for 27 years. And you'd be thinking, wait, maybe he'd be angry, but then he wouldn't be in the spotlight anymore. He'd maybe want to go back to his home and live like a simple life because he's already suffered enough. But that's not true. Nelson Mandela was somehow able to use those 27 years to fuel his anger in a constructive purpose. He was able to abolish apartheid from his country. And you're thinking, okay, maybe it makes sense that he was mad at the people. That's why he tried to punish them and to get them out of his country. But not many people would do that after 27 years. They'll probably give up and just want to go back home and live a simple life. But Nelson Mandela was a special person. He used his talents after prison to become a person of high influence, and he was able to help and get the freedom of so many people, not just himself, but the people of his whole country. That's why it's so unique. This chapter talks about anger and how you're able to use anger no matter what type of anger it is, no matter how long you've had it, no matter if it was useless before. This chapter is unique because my dad teaches you how to use your anger in a constructive manner, no matter how bad it was. So this was chapter 4, The Reformers, talking about anger and using the examples of these people in order to shift meaningless anger into constructive anger. Then chapter 5, Purposeful Life. And here he also talks about lots of different people, but here he talks about more about fulfilling your purpose. Why Martin Luther, even though he went through so much bad things, he was still die happy because he was able to fulfill his purpose. And one of the biggest people where my dad talked about in this chapter was David. David that most of us should know, or who became king, who fought the lion and the bear as a young boy. This David was one of the best humans in the Bible, and you can really tell that he has already applied everything as he did, as I've talked about before. All the anger he had towards Goliath and the Philistines for abusing the Israelites, he was able to use it to defeat Goliath. All the insults that Goliath hurled at him, he was able to take that and put it into a stone, which at first of all would have been a ridiculous idea if it wasn't for the Lord. So it was also listening to the Lord that he chose to fight a giant with a stone. And all that together, David is just a person who really lived out for his purpose. And of course he made mistakes, he wasn't perfect at all, but he still was able to be talked about up until now because he fulfilled his purpose. He didn't become king and then do whatever he wanted. He continued getting better, he continued listening to the Lord more, using his anger to abolish people, to help people, to become a real freedom fighter. And all of that is really wonderful. And he was able to become that person because he was so willing to serve. And as a leader, not many people really want to put themselves back in the position when they were a common person. And not many leaders think about their citizens or their people that way. But David, he was one of the unique stories where he would think about other people almost as much as he thought about himself. And that is, according to this book, is why David became such a successful leader, because he was not scared to listen to the Lord. He was not scared to listen to the Lord in order to help the lives of so many other people. And it really helps put things in perspective when you think about, oh yeah, David could have been He could have done anything he wanted, basically, because he was the highest person in Israel. He had defeated basically everyone around him. Yet he would still put all these projects in order to help the lives of his people. And that's just really cool to think about. And anyone that will make a difference would have to put others ahead of themselves. And you can definitely see that is what David did. So we have to learn from David on how to serve, how to win the heart of the people, how to take your nation to a higher level than anyone else. So that is what we learned from David. And you can't just be an ordinary person. When you get to that high level of influence, you shouldn't forget that you're there not for yourself, but for other people as well. The next person my dad talks about is about Daniel. And you're thinking about, what did Daniel have to be angry about? Well, it was the fact that he was a captive in another land, and he could have been mad at Nebuchadnezzar that Nebuchadnezzar was so angry because he couldn't understand the dream. He felt like, wait, how can this guy be so mad that he doesn't understand the dream? Meanwhile, me and all these people are here as prisoners of war. We're forced to work here, we're forced to live here, not out of our own volition. So he was able to use that anger combined with his willingness to listen to God to decipher those dreams of Nebuchadnezzar and become a high person in that society. So when you combine that anger and that calling from the Lord and the Lord's voice, then you basically be unstoppable. You'll be able to get to that high position. And once you get there, you should remember that you are there not for yourself, but from other people as well. That is why you have a purpose. That is why you were created for this world. You weren't created only to better the life of yourself. You were created to become an impactful person for many people. And that is why it is so important to remember that. Once we combine this anger, once we combine listening to the Lord, we should still remember that we have a purpose on this earth. And once we get to that high influence, that high level, like David and Daniel did, always think about other people, always think about your life purpose. So that was chapter 5, talking about why is the purpose of life is so important and how you can apply it into your life. Chapter 6 is insulted.
Can you show the book?
Yes.
Insulted by Ungodliness, that's the name of the book. Raising a Generation of the Provoked in Every Nation. Okay. Not just share the link to this program, share the video. Under your video, you see the share button. You'll be able to go share it.
Yep. All right, chapter 6 is Insulted by Oppression. And this should remind you about the title of chapter 1, which was Oppressed by Injustice. And here he talks about insulted by oppression, because oppression is also a huge part of society that should not be overridden or just overthought. And he mentions this because we have almost become so used to ungodliness that we almost don't feel wrong when we see oppression in our lives. And it got to this, because it's all around us. But since we've been almost accustomed to it, since we've already almost adjusted to it, we don't have the right reaction to it. If we see homeless people on the street, our first thought, our first instinct should be to help them. But at a point, it becomes like, oh, why is he here? Why is he in this part of town? Or could he not go somewhere else? And we've just become, as a society, so desensitized where we just don't think about the oppression all around us. So my dad just puts this into perspective. He blasts this that we still need to think about oppression, whether it is single level oppression or family level oppression or generational oppression, because all three levels that my dad talks about in this book, they all have huge consequences that if people do not rise up to stop them, then it will just let ungodliness continue growing. And the whole purpose of this book is to stop ungodliness from growing, stop ungodliness from continuing as a society. And we need to really make sure that we are listening to the Lord, because the Lord will never turn a blind eye like that. He will always have that same pure level of understanding, pure level of thinking. So we should always think to the Lord, like, how would he react in this situation? What would his thoughts be to this? And that's why it's very important that we should think about that. And it's also bad because the leaders, they lack the knowledge and the importance of justice. And because of that, oppression becomes a common neighbor of all the citizens. And so that's why when you get to the high position, you need to be like David. You need to think about the citizens. Because if you don't, if you only think about yourself, then you won't realize it, but your country will just collapse right behind you. And the person we talk about here, the example that my dad uses, is Mordecai. And Mordecai, when you think about Mordecai, well, what did he do? He was like basically Esther's advisor. You think, oh, it was Esther that did most of the things. But Esther was still the person Mordecai was still the person who was behind the scenes, who used his influence, which would be Esther, to save all the Jews. Because if you remember correctly, Haman, who was very close to the king, he wanted to exterminate all the Jews. But Mordecai would not let that happen. But the reason that Haman wanted to do this was because Mordecai would not bow down to him. Mordecai said he would only bow down to his king, which was Jesus, which was the Lord. So we should always remember, we should always have the Lord placed above everyone else, and we should not compromise for anything, even if it seems that the consequences will be severe. And there's also a very interesting point that my dad brought up in the book, and I thought it was really cool. I'll just read it out loud. That Haman is a depiction of human beings who are full of ego, jealousy, and destruction, and will always want to elevate themselves above others. When you think about it, it sort of makes sense. We have way more Hamans than we do Mordecais. We have way more people who think about themselves, who think about, oh, I want people to worship me, and I will do anything to make sure that happens. We don't have many people who will be like, no, I will only worship the Lord, and I will do anything in my power to think about all my people, which in Mordecai's case were the Jews. Haman only thought about himself, which is the common thinking of humans everywhere. But Mordecai, he thought about Esther, he thought about all his clan, he thought about his whole nation, and that is not, you could say, almost not normal, because that's how society has become. That's why we need to remember that we cannot be people who only think about ourselves. We need to use the Lord, we need to use everything that He's taught us to become people who think about others and use our influence, whichever way it comes to form, to help those people. And the second person we'll talk about is Nehemiah. He was also a person in captivity, and he was serving the palace, but his heart was because he heard about what was happening in his father's land. And it was interesting that he felt so touched to it, that he felt so touched to his homeland, that he asked the king if he could go back and help rebuild. And as he's personally thinking about it, I wouldn't say I have as much passion as Nehemiah to Nigeria, since I've lived in Ukraine for most of my life. Yeah, it's interesting that I should still have that level of wanting to help other people, that passion of wanting to, no matter where they are, no matter, I don't even feel such a strong connection, that I still need to use my influence, my talents, and use the Lord in order to help as many people as I can. So that was just really interesting to me. I think somebody asked me once during a Q&A, like, what I think about like going to Nigeria with my parents. And I said, well, I don't feel like Nigeria is much of my home. Maybe I'd go to visit. But this really helped think about how to actually use like my father's passion for myself and how to be able to help other people. And there also, my dad talked about steps of how to confront oppression. There are 8 of them. I'll just state them now. Number 1, take counsel, think, and discuss with stakeholders. Number 2, confront logically the officials that are rooted in oppression. Number 3, state your case lawfully. Number 4, your wisdom will silence the adversaries. Number 5, teach them the fear of God. Number 6, warn them of the bad image of society to the outside world. Number 7, live an exemplary life before them. 8, demand restoration. So all these steps are ways to make sure that oppression does not continue wherever you are. And this is it's either you being as the oppressor, as the one who is being oppressed, or you being as someone who is the third party. You can use these steps, no matter who you are, to make sure that oppression does not continue. And this is basically a 100% guaranteed way to make sure that the oppression does not continue wherever you are. So if you want to learn about more about how to stop people from oppressing, how to become a person who stops oppression, I definitely recommend you to buy this book. So that was definitely recommend you to buy Insulted by Ungodliness. It will help you not only to become one who hates ungodliness and becomes a person against it, you'll also be able to be a person who's able to free hundreds of lives from oppression. And that was chapter 6. And now is chapter 7, dealing with the root of ungodliness. And the root of ungodliness is none other than greed. Greed, and it can be divided into 4 categories: power, wealth, pleasure, then control and dominance. So all these 4 you can think about. Oh yeah, when you think about it, many people really do seek these things: power, wealth, pleasure, control. These are the things that every human being, if you'd ask them, what do you want in life, I'm pretty sure that one of these 4 will pop up, no matter which way they use to say that, oh, it's not this, oh, it's not that. It's still one of these 4. And it's very interesting why that is the root of ungodliness. Because the devil uses our deepest, wickedest desires, and he manifests them, and he almost manipulates us to do anything to get them. But we should be the opposite way. We should not allow these 4 things to, and most importantly, greed, to be our motivator, to be our incentive factor. Because if we do, then we'll just become puppets for the devil. We won't be anyone special. We'll just become ordinary people who are just fighting for the same thing, only thinking about themselves, and that is not how we were taught. Because Jesus taught that a man's life is not qualified by all of those things, but it is qualified by the values of godliness that that person possesses. And if we actually try to be like the Lord, if we have that common saying of what would Jesus do, then we'd obviously be trying to increase our values, try to increase our godliness. But when people are pursuing these 4 things because of greed, they're just spreading ungodliness. And when every person does an action in order to get closer to one of these 4 things, then they're just spreading ungodliness, whether they know it or not. That's why it's most important for us, for people who know that these things will get you nowhere, important for us to be able to preach to other people the importance of not living for greed. Because if these people continue living for greed, they'll end up at a dead end, and then they'll maybe become depressed, and then they'll just not have a good life at the end. That's why we need to be people who are helping people this way. We're giving them a purpose in life, helping them discover their purpose in life, making sure they're not wasting their lives just going for a thing that will never satisfy them. And there are also duties of the army of the kingdom that we need to think about. And these are fighter for the kingdom, we have to be the light of the kingdom, have to be servants of godliness. These 3 things are our duties, since we know better and since we have influence to people. So we need to fight for the kingdom. We need to make sure that the kingdom becomes the priority in people's lives. We need to become the light of the kingdom by living a life where people will be able to take lessons from us. They'll be able to see God through us. We need to be servants of godliness, where we need to be willing to serve these people, and we must not be scared to help them. And to wrap this chapter up, godliness is continuously enthroned as the army of the Lord. So, therefore, you have to arise and take your place in this season, especially as we are seeing so many insults of ungodliness. So, we need to arise. We can't just stay in our little spot. We need to become people who grow up and take responsibility. Chapter 8, which talks about the provoked generation, as it is in the beginning, at the cover of our book, raising a generation of the provoked in every nation. Here it is talked about in chapter 8, the provoked generation. And this is the generation that got provoked intentionally just because they wanted to make a change for their nation. And these people, they have the particular mindset to go for what they desire, an attitude that does not give up, and an action that keeps on striving for that thing until they attain it. So these people, they wouldn't just be satisfied with seeing all these maybe homeless people on the streets or seeing all these killings going on in different countries. They wouldn't be satisfied. Satisfied by that. They wouldn't be satisfied by the efforts that are being placed towards them, since obviously they haven't been stopped. So this generation has been provoked by their anger, and they're able to go ahead and they're able to change something about it. And this generation, it's not like they're all in one time period as you usually think about generation. These people can come out in any timeline, in any time zone. These people would just be any person who realizes that if I stand here and do nothing, then there's no point of me living. They use their anger, use their frustration in order to become people who are not unique, who are unique, people who are not ordinary, people who will just continue going forward and using that anger to not be normal people. So this chapter talks more about, like, they do not accept limitations, they speak out, they join forces with like-minded people, and they're definitely willing to pay the price in order to get their goals. So you should definitely become one of these people. If something is bothering you, if you see something and it just angers you, you shouldn't keep that to yourself. You should definitely raise your voice. You should definitely try to use your talents to get somewhere in life, to have a high influence. You'll be able to help these people that anger you, because this anger will be your provocation and it's to be your motivation for continuing forward. So that is a roundup of chapter 8, and chapter 9 is titled The Spirit of Godliness. And here we talk about how to make good planting of godliness on the land. And unfortunately, the way of godliness, it isn't the short way. It's definitely the long way. It's definitely a path that will make you go a long way around in order to get to the destination. It's almost as if the way that the Israelites were taken to their promised land. It took them 40 years in order to get there. Even though it was a punishment, it still took them 40 years to get to the promised land. And you can think about it that way, because this path of godliness is definitely the harder path, but it is the right path. It is the path where you go and you see that, okay, this is wrong, but I shall be the light, and I shall come and make this right, and make this right. It shall be the path that isn't easy, but it is the more worthwhile path. It will be the path that in the end, it will definitely be worthwhile, and as you are in your lying bed, you know that, I definitely did something in my life. You won't be those people who are constantly searching for greed, and at the end of their life, they'll be like, I wanted more, or they say, all that I've done in my life has attained to nothing. When you are at your deathbed, you will say, I have done all I could, and I am satisfied. And recently I saw somewhere, Albert Einstein, one of his dying words was, not his dying words, but he had an option to have surgery in order to increase his lifespan. But he refused it because he said, I have done enough in my life. I don't want to continue living artificially, and because that is not living at all. I have done enough in my life and I am satisfied. And that is the same aspect, the same mindset that we need to have when we are near dying stages, where we are not fearing death, because we know that we have reached where we want to reach, we have attained where we want to attain. And this chapter just really talks about it more, talks about that godliness inside of you, talks about the way that you're able to encompass the Lord in your everyday life. And these fruits of godliness, they're power, they're profit, peace, and prosperity. You can remember them as for the 4 P's: power, profit, peace, and prosperity. These 4 things will definitely help you in your path in godliness, and they are your results. They are what you shall attain after this long road. And
find out if anybody wants to share the link. If you have not yet shared the link, let's go ahead and share the link to this program. If you look under the video, you'll see somewhere where you can share. And we're talking about insult about ungodliness. Show the book, please. Okay. Yep.
All right. So we are coming to the last chapter in this book, and it is called The Synergy of Significance. And I don't know if all of you know what synergy is, but synergy is basically when two muscles are working together in cooperation to achieve a result. And the synergy of significance, then we need to define significance. And significance is what is your purpose, basically. It's why you're here, and it is what you're meant to fulfill as a result of the insults by the ungodliness that you've seen in your life. So when you combine those together, you're basically combining what irritates you, or your anger on ungodliness, and the purpose you are meant to fulfill. And this is putting together all that we've read in this book. These two things are what you need to take away from this book. If you're taking away anything, you need to take away what angers you. You need to take away your purpose in life. And you need to combine those two things. Because the first thing, what angers you, that will be your motivation, should be your passion. If it really angers you, if it really frustrates you, you won't be satisfied until you're able to fix it 100%. That's why it should never run out until you have completely done everything. And second one, it is your purpose. It is why you're living. As long as you have a purpose, you won't be like bored with life. You always have somewhere to go. And if you combine those two together, then you become a person of significance. You won't become a common person. You'll be able to break out of that 97%. You'll be able to join the 3% because you know that you are a person who is not living for the ordinary. You are pursuing wholeness. You are living intentionally. You are being a person who isn't just satisfied by the ordinary, satisfied by the common. You are a person who continuously goes forward, and you aren't scared to do anything to achieve your goal. In order to be significant, you need to be whole. To have wholeness doesn't mean you should always be happy, though. It means that you should always be satisfied. Because happiness, it comes from your environment, it comes from around you. But when you're satisfied, it comes from within, it comes from what you've done already, and like your progress level, basically. So when you are whole, you don't necessarily need to be happy, but you should still be satisfied. And you need to make sure that you live intentionally and you take risks, because they will get you closer to your goal. And by doing this, you're not limiting yourself. Because when you're scared to take risks, you're not able to achieve the result that you set out for yourself. You'll be thinking, oh, what happens if I do this? What happens to do that? You'll be thinking about your consequences. But you shouldn't be thinking about your consequences. You should be sure, you should trust God that He will protect you no matter what happens. And that is how you will not limit your significance. So when you find your meaning in life, it's simply coming into significance because you have been able to accomplish and fulfill your purpose. And what you have to take away from this book, and there's also a part of conclusion, is that you are significant. And my dad just gives you a challenge to every reader of this book. Are you going to become significant? Are you going to let this anger not control you, but are going to let it become your passion? Are you going to let your frustrations be the incentive for continuing forward? Are you going to let anything that annoys you to motivate you in order to become a unique person? My dad just calls all of you out, whoever reads this book, Insulted by Ungodliness, not to be someone who is ordinary after reading this book. After reading this book, you need to use your anger constructively, and you need to become someone who will not be ordinary. You need to become a part of the provoked generation. And my dad is calling all of you to do it, and so am I.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Okay, insulted by ungodliness. All of us get angered and irritated on a daily basis, but not too many of us use that constructively. Not too many of us use it for the kingdom. So even your anger and frustrations could be used for the kingdom. That's what this book is, and how to use your anger and frustration for the kingdom of God. Beautiful.
Thank you very much.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, what do you people think? Anything to say? Okay, Michael Babb said, excellent review. Frank said, brilliant. Bidemi said, awesome. Shigo, exquisite review from a very wise, finely grounded young man. Thanks a lot. Way beyond my expectation. Thank you. Edwin Hamimi, Pastor Sunday, I'm proud to be your mentee. Your children are not left behind. You have set a good example for us to follow. Olalekan, wow, thank you, Perez. Ufoma, I didn't know what to do with my anger until I met you, Pastor Sunday. Olamide, that is, Olamide says, well done, Sir Perez Adelaja. Oriyomi, thank you, good job. Sasha, God bless you. Train up the child in the way that he should go. Esther Kuganja, well done, Perez. Olamide said, I'm short of words. Oriyomi, well done, Perez. Gift, more grace, sir. Fresh oil, fresh garments, fresh spirit in Jesus' name. Bidemi, direct your anger constructively to solve problems. Perez Adelaja, yep. Olaleka, I mean, even the professionals cannot do a better job than what Perez did. I'm astonished. Daniel, it was magnificent. Shekula, wow, great job. Ufoma, well done, Perez. I have to watch again. Jide, awesome. Jide Adoye. Omonike, for Perez, clapping for Perez. God bless you for this great wisdom. I can say that you are going to help your generation and make your parents very proud. Jane Munsaka, wonderful book review, mind-blowing. Thank you. Dr. Adelaja and Perez for an excellent book review. Princess Juliet, great job. Olamide, definitely I have to listen again and again. Galina, my respect to you, Perez. Samuel Onaiwi, excellent. Shola Lamodi, Perez, you are an inspiration to young people, young men. Kunle Ajala, wow, very awesome. Well, I'll be back tomorrow morning with you, myself. I'll be doing the program in the morning by myself, by the grace of God. And in the evening, we have the girls coming. We have Pearl and Zoe, or Zoe and Pearl. It's Pearl's birthday tomorrow, so she will come and share with us what she has learned in her 14 years of life. Paul, Kate, thank you. You touched something today. Just what I needed, guidance, thank you. Bafu, what a young man, much admiration. Anastasia, Perez, you spoke fluently and continuously for over an hour, dissecting point after point after point. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. So tomorrow, Juan Carlos Pimentel from Guatemala. Oh, wow. Greetings to you, too. Well, we'll be back tomorrow, and we'll be happy to see you to continue this program. God bless you all. Have a wonderful night. Bye.
Good night.